Our guest today is Roger Corlett. He is the Ashtabula County auditor, has been for 12 years.
It'll be 12 years in March.
Okay, all right. And you are a member of the Board of Revision.
Yes.
And Board of Revision are the guys that if you think that your property taxes are too high, you go to them. And, if everything else is exhausted, you go to the Board of Revisions, which includes the treasurer, Mr. Corlett, and a county commissioner, and they can review and change that. Is that a good summary? Or?
Yes. This is the final process at the local level. If you give us evidence that we can rely on to change the value, and we do that quite often, then we can settle on something. But if you don't agree and we don't agree with your number, then you have the right to appeal to the state level.
And one of the reasons I brought that up right away is the Board of Revision was September 26th met with a rather lengthy hearing about Spire over in Harpersfield, that there's different questions about how much it is worth, and the board has come to a decision on that. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, the board met Wednesday of this last week to discuss different appraisals and how we were going to come up with a number. It turns out that the appraisal that the auditor hired, they do specialize in sports complex. The one main thing they made it very clear is that a sports complex located here in a rural region like this, and other factors, it doesn't show viability as an economic
Right.
organization. I mean, it's not going to make money, and it made it very clear that we need to come up with a number based on the fact that it should be used for something else other than that sports complex.
It's in a rural area, and it's all private. Rare is something like this, a complex the size of Spire, a totally private concern. There's usually some kind of a local, from what I remember, public mix with the private, and they emphasize one or two sports, not the far-ranging ones that the Spire.
Right, overly broad idea of different sports. They usually do specialize in one or two sports,
Like aquatics or something.
and they're usually located much closer to an international airport.
And so way back when, there was an assessment that Spire was worth about $55 million, I believe. And since then, it has dropped to $5 to $7 million. And so there's a wide range in there that the board had to decide on. And you decided on, how much was it worth?
We decided on $11,530,000, which was a number that was given to us by the school board's appraiser. And we literally pulled the good things out of both appraisals because the alternative use became the only way to value it. And I've said before, I don't like to lower values because it does affect other taxpayers.
So other industries are going to have to make up that money.
Yes, because every levy is got a fixed dollar amount. Basically, that you're supposed to get. So every time some properties go down, other properties go up, the rates change. If you just have one property going down this large, then the other properties in that classification of commercial industrial, their rates are going to go up, and they're going to pay more.
So a lot of people are watching this process, I would imagine.
Yes.
And they can still appeal that.
Yes, they could appeal the decision. I have no idea yet. We just issued the value, so we'll hear. They have 30 days.
So instead of it being a sports complex, it's being, as a practical standpoint, maybe using it for warehousing.
That's the most likely. But it would take $4 million to convert it into warehouse. So it's not an easy thing, and somebody might have a different idea. but we picked the value because the alternative use was more commercial industrial rather than residential.
Right. Although that brings up stuff that isn't really related right here and now, but Geneva schools would have a tough time because they use that facility for their football and soccer and graduations and all kinds of things that they don't have other facilities for. So that would not be good news for them.
That is not good news, yes.
No. All right, Roger Corlett, the county auditor, is our guest. And you've been in the job for almost 12 years. And before that, you were in the private sector?
I was in the private sector as a CPA at a certified public accounting firm called S.R. Snodgrass. I was a manager of all audits, and I did certified audits for the city of Geneva, city of Ashtabula, and the city of Conneaut for many years. That's why I knew how government budgets worked and a lot about the budgeting process and the financial statements.
So, yeah, that you have a unique perspective. You were in the private sector, but you knew well the government, the aspect of it.
Yes.
Government's always a little different than the private sector.
Well, like most people from business, we think that we can come to a government office and apply business principles, and it's going to work better. But you find out once you're in government, government doesn't work real fast. And so it does take time to change things, and it takes time to change people's attitudes even. But it does help to have the business experience.
Now, so you're a CPA. Your opponent, who was rather aggressive this campaign, and he will be a guest later, but he says that he's got a master's in business administration. You have a CPA. To a guy that asked Siri to add up numbers for him, which is me, can you tell me what's the difference and why a CPA is better?
Well, I think a CPA with experience is better. I don't think anybody that has just received their MBA or CPA is as good as somebody who has 40 years in the business. And, you know, it gives you a different perspective. And my opponent likes to say you don't need life experience, but I've since learned that life experience and provides you with the background to be able to make critical decisions. You've been there, you know consequences, you're able to evaluate the situations and make better decisions. And I think a leader, especially in that office, it's a critical office for the county, needs to be able to be a part of the discussions with the commissioners, with other elected officials, and even with his own office in regard to certain things that come up. You can't ever tell what's going to be in front of you.
So you have to make the final decision on things. You can't turn around and ask somebody else to do it. You're the top guy, the elected official in the office.
I'm the one that's going to have to answer for it. And I can't say, well, it was his decision and not mine, because he works for me.
Right.
He works for the taxpayers.
Another thing your opponent talks about is transparency. And you talk about your campaign literature that you're transparent. He says there needs to be more transparency in the office. So talk to me about transparency.
Okay, when I came into office, my promise was that I would make the office more transparent as well as professional, and I have. The first thing I did is set up a website that I could put all the financial statements on, and I've been putting the monthly financial statements on the website ever since I first got there, and we were one of the first counties to do that. The monthly financial statements are there. A lot of people don't know about it, and I keep trying to talk to people about what's there. We put the sales tax report, we put other financial information on there, and we put everything we could, and I'm still finding things. Now, more regularly now, we do public notices in regard to, okay, we put on a tax calculator so that you can figure out what that new levy is going to cost you if it passes. So we have maybe half dozen new levies on the ballot, and this calculator will tell you what on your house in your district, that's what it's going to cost you. And we try to get the word out, but the newspapers they publish it, and we get it on the website, and I think that's being transparent. Everything we do is open, and I always invite. When I talk to someone, I always invite them to come to the office and talk about their values on their properties, because that's what we're there for.
Well, yeah, I know that we've talked before doing interviews like this, and you kind of emphasized, we just talked about the Board of Revision, but before you go to that formal process, if there's a problem, you look like you have a mansion out in front and the place is gutted by fire inside and the person doesn't notice that, you can go to your office and talk to you about it before you get to any formal proceedings with something like the Board of Revision.
Right now, we are working on tax year 2018. And we are having informal reviews. If somebody wants to come and tell us something about their property that they think would decrease the value, we will set up an appointment and have them come and talk to us and, provide us any information. A guy in the parking lot the other day said, I just bought this property and it's like $160,000. You have it at $210,000 or something. And I said, well, if it's an arm's length transaction, you think it's, an unrelated party transaction, come to the office, answer a few questions, bring the information, and we can adjust it now. You don't have to wait and go through the Board of Revision. It's an informal thing.
Okay, yeah, you don't have to hire a lawyer
Right.
or anything like that.
Right. I mean, we're there to look at what you have to show us, and if you want, we can even go to the house or the building and see what you're talking about and verify. We can make the adjustments this year right now before we close the year.
Mm-hmm. So is there a specific time people should be doing that? Meeting you at the parking lot?
Well, somebody happened to find me in a parking lot.
Right.
And I do. That's the other thing. I'm out in the public. People know who I am, and when I'm talking to people, I always invite them to look at the website. If I think the information, they might find it there, or come to the office or call certain people in the office that will be able to address their question.
We address a little bit. We've only got a few minutes left. Is the farming out of certain work that your opponent says that he would be able to do in-house and save money? Because there is stuff that you've done that used to be farmed out to private agencies.
Right. I think you're referring to the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, which we refer to lovingly as CAFR. That report is a very extensive financial report. It's on my website. Every year we put it on there, especially after it's audited. But then this report, I said that was one of my promises that I would save the county money, which means I'm saving the taxpayers' money by doing more of it in-house, if not the whole thing. And we were able to do it in-house for at least 3 years. Then that person moved on to a better job, had a better opportunity, which I encourage. Then I found somebody who is a CPA and an accountant, but that person does not have the extensive experience that the other one had. So we had to go and get assistance. But even with the assistance, we're still saving compared to what we were paying even back in 2006.
So you're doing more of it in-house before you pass it on to somebody else.
Right. We're doing the hard work. They review it and they put it into a formal format.
Okay. Our guest today, Roger Corlett, Ashtabula County Auditor, running for re-election next month.
Yes.
Okay.
Experience counts.
Okay, thank you very much. Our guest on Perspectives today is Dave Thomas. He is the fiscal officer for Austinburg, and he is also running for county auditor. And so Mr. Thomas, why did you decide to run for auditor?
Yeah. So thank you so much, Bob, for having me on the show. This is pretty exciting to be up here. We were just joking and talking about being on Jim Coco's show for Good Morning. And so this is a whole different way to be up here in Haniat, but I appreciate it.
This is where all the media is,
Yeah.
Where else do you do interviews in Ashtabula County, but on Coco's show or this one?
We need like a county-wide TV show or something like that because there's so much going on. And as you know, in your role in the Gazette, and of course I'm at, probably 5 or 6 different events and things on the weekends every day. So there's always lots going on. But so getting back to why we're here in our discussion. So the county auditor's position. So the county auditor, the best way it interacts with our residents is through property values and property taxes. Going door to door up here in Conneaut, talk to a good number of people, especially along the lake.
They all say they don't pay enough in property
Oh, of
taxes.
course. I mean, every single person that you meet. But they, scarily enough, a good number of people on the lake have actually had their property values almost double over this past cycle. And so that's a pretty scary thing. Many of the people who live on the lake have purchased their homes maybe 20, 30, 40 years ago, and they're retired there, and they're paying now more in property taxes than they possibly even paid to purchase the home to begin with, which is kind of a pretty crazy thing to think about. And so the auditor's office is the one that values property all throughout the county. And so when you're talking about giving certainty to taxpayers. That in my mind is the biggest role of government, is giving certainty to our taxpayers, especially financially and in their budgets. The auditor's role really can be expanded. Currently it is just valuing property, doing appeals for property. If you've heard about the Spire incident and the whole kind of situation with that kind of highlights the appeals process and what goes on with the auditor's office there. It doles out all the financial information and payments throughout the county as well. So it's kind of that central hub for finance, but also for information. And so I think if we can use the auditor's role to really spread information and give certainty to our taxpayers with what's coming down the pipeline, that can really help us to grow economically, to hopefully attract new businesses in. They see our model of government here in the county, and they like it. They think that gives them kind of more certainty for their budgets moving forward. And then for farmers who live here currently, for residents, for businesses, if the auditor's office can be part of that solution to keep them here, I think that's fantastic. So when looking at which aspect of our county government actually interacts the most with our taxpayers, it's. I joke with the commissioners. It's not the commissioners. It's not.
I've been to the meetings.
Yeah, it's not the sheriff's office. Hopefully not, at least. It's the auditor's office, because almost every single person in our county pays property taxes, and at the very least, every single person in our county pays sales tax, and they pay taxes that go through the county system.
Taxes too.
Gasoline tax, income tax now. And so the auditor's office really has that opportunity to spread that information and to share, what goes into your valuation process. How do you appeal your valuation? And really at the finite amount of it, where do your tax dollars go? My full-time job, so like you had said, I'm the fiscal officer for Austenburg Township. So that means that I do all of our day-to-day finances, I do our budgeting, our payroll, our expenses, and our kind of financial forecasts. My full-time job was at Grand River Academy out there in Austenburg, and I did the fundraising for the school. And so, I learned firsthand what it's like to ask people for money. And what's the number one thing that people ask for when you ask them for money is, where is this money going? How is my contribution, my investment, being spent? Do I know it's being well spent? Do I know it's being well taken care of? And can I see the fruits of my investment? And so for me, taxpayers are the same way as donors. They're the same way as customers. When you give your taxes, you want to make sure that your tax dollars are going to where you think that they're going to be best spent. Be that your local schools, your roads, your bridges,
But
your sheriff's department.
The auditor doesn't decide where that money is
Nope,
spent.
they don't decide where the money's spent, but they're the kind of holders of the information. And so the auditor's office can really spread that out and show folks who are paying taxes, either property taxes or just sales tax, here's where the proportions of your money is being spent. And currently it's up on the county's website. Very difficult to understand. Your average taxpayer, you look over the spreadsheets, it's really not easy to understand. And so making it, kind of boiling it down, spread the information on your tax bills if you receive a tax bill each year from the county, or in evening classes or sessions, social media as well, online in a very easy to understand format. I think that can help to give a lot more certainty to our taxpayers just by spreading that information. And if you look around, really people don't do that. Unfortunately, government, it's more of kind of a you come to us, you ask us questions, and then if we can, we'll tell you. But not having just an open door policy, but really an active outreach policy.
So you think maybe the website needs to be more simplified because on he said that he is putting more information out on the website.
Oh, yeah.
And he has come on this program before, or when I was doing the Colco show, and was encouraging people, if you don't believe that this is fair, what your taxes are, come and let's talk about it, and maybe we can take care of it before it goes into the board of
the Board of Revisions. Yep.
Revisions, yes.
Yeah. So, and those have happened over the past. The current county auditor has been there for 12 years. So, especially in his first term, back in 2006 to 2010, there was a bigger focus on education and on outreach. Unfortunately, since then, there really hasn't been as much as I think we really need in our county. We're not at the point in our economy, in our county, where we can just kind of sit back and wait for folks to come to us. We have to be much more of an outreach arm in that office for sure. And so when you're talking about, that's a great example. When you want to appeal your property values, a lot of folks, I actually just talked with a family out in Geneva who appealed their property values, and they really felt like the process was working against them. They didn't understand it. They went through the Board of Revisions. They had to take off work to go down to Jefferson to do so. And then when the board ruled against them, they had to appeal the process all the way up to the 11th District Court of Appeals. That took time. That took money.
Attorney?
Yep. Actually, she represented herself.
Oh, okay.
Really spunky family, liked them a lot. And they felt so strongly that they were correct. And so they won ultimately. But that just took so much time and energy on their part and money.
She should write a book.
I encourage her to do something. So I don't know if she's going to have a letter
Blog
in.
or something,
Just to share her story. But really that process, we should be having a guide in the office kind of walking people through. She never met with the auditor, asked to talk with him.
But he did say that he would rather, he said he met somebody out in a parking lot that said, hey, I just bought this and I want to fix it up, but right now it's in kind of bad shape. And so that started a process where they reviewed it and made changes.
And I think more of that should be happening. I think he said that just when he was walking into work, a person came up to him.
Right.
And that's great. But having much more of a purposeful process of, the county recorder, for example, I mentioned this in one of the candidates' nights. Barb, who's my predecessor in Austinburg for the fiscal officer, she's now the county recorder. Awesome, I love her a lot. I think she's on her 5th one now, and it's just a simple evening program about recording deeds and what to do through the deeds process. And she had over 120 people there.
Really?
And that was her 5th one. So if they're that popular, that many people, largely retired folks who are looking at what happens when they pass away with the transfer process, but they're really interested in that. And I have to imagine that there are a good number of people out in our county who have concerns, have questions, and will be willing to go in the evening or maybe on a weekend and sit through a quick hour long with cookies and coffee and that type of thing. And having more of those kind of planned out, purposeful ones. Sadly, ironically enough, I just saw in the paper that the office is offering informal sessions to come in and talk. We haven't seen those prior to this past year. And so I think it needs to happen every year, not just every 4 years, where the office is doing
to be
more
fair,
outreach.
he did come on his program, and it wasn't during an election, and did mention that was the big thing that he pushed was, if you think things are unfair, come in and talk to me. I don't know if it's on his website too or not, but he says we'd rather do this than to have to go through the Board of Revision, simplify things. But Barb is, she's been on this program, and even from the historical standpoint in her office, if you want to do some searching about your home and
it's really
stuff,
neat.
It really is, yes.
Yeah. So I think our county is really in a good position to spread more of that information and to work with more of our residents, and that can kind of be our competitive advantage. We're a small town, we're a small county, and so how we interact with our government really should mirror our culture in the county, and that can be kind of what helps to draw companies in. And as we talk, just spent an hour lunch with the Visitors Bureau and talking about tourism and what that looks like and how we can attract more people in. I think it all kind of works together. And in my mind, the auditor's office has a big role that they can play in it if we have kind of a purposeful mentality in that direction.
David Thomas is our guest. He is running. He's a Republican candidate for county auditor. One thing I mentioned, I asked Mr. Corlett, who's on the program last week, was which is better, Masters of Business Administration or CPA? How are they different? And he said it isn't so much that, it's the experience. he said that he worked for Snodgrass for several years before he became auditor, which he'll be his 12th year, he said, in March. And he said that he audited the books for the city of Ashtabula, for the city of Conneaut, for the city of Geneva. And he's got vast background in it. And he says that's where the difference is. He's got the experience. You just got your master's degree. So how do you respond to that?
Oh, yeah. So, when the current auditor ran back in 2006, this was kind of his number one thing, was that he had a CPA and he'd be able to do some of the reports in-house. And unfortunately, so there's 22 employees in the office, all very experienced, all properly hired. And they're the ones that actually do the day-to-day finances. So they're the ones that do the paychecks, they look over the books, they prepare the reports. You hire well. You hire for what you need in the office. And the role of the auditor is more so to oversee all those employees, but also then to create the policies, to do the outreach, to kind of have what's the mission, what's the focus of the office to keep going it forward. And so, the day-to-day work of the auditor isn't auditing. I really wish that the state could change the name of the position because it's kind of a misnomer with what you actually do. It's much more, doing valuations and setting that certainty for our taxpayers as opposed to actually auditing. The auditor's office doesn't actually audit anyone. It's more the state that comes in just because the counties don't have resources to actually audit some of our local school districts or townships or cities. And
Well,
so
the fact though that he did that auditing, that should give him some advantage, don't you think?
Well, I would say if you're running for state auditor, that could be an advantage because that's what the state auditor does.
But the state auditor himself,
Right. No, we don't. I mean, I think there's only 3 CPA county auditors in the state, and the state auditor typically, probably one in the past 30 years, has been a CPA. So it's much more, my MBA, and I think you get way too in the weeds when you talk about degrees and what you went to college for. But my MBA, it's focused much more on organizational leadership problems and kind of what is your leadership with employees. And so I think that kind of speaks much more to what an office culture is and then what priorities for local government is as opposed to just the day-to-day finance work that a CPA does either in the private sector or in the public sector. So, if I was a taxpayer and I'm looking at the office, I know that day-to-day stuff, disclosures are being taken care of, disbursements are being taken care of, but I want to know more information, and I want to see the auditor. I want to have the employees out and about, and I want to see kind of what's happening. And I just don't think that that's been happening over the past few years. Financially, things are being taken care of, but we can do more.
okay, we are about out of time.
Oh, wow. Oh,
It
great.
goes. Actually, we do have another minute. Let me
Okay, awesome.
see my math skills.
Well, I do want to speak to something.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so Bob, you mentioned a Republican candidate for county auditor. And my current township position in Austinburg, we're nonpartisan.
Right.
And I really wish that countywide offices could be nonpartisan as well. Because there really is no difference between a Republican and a Democrat when you're talking about your county finances.
And people get along very well. For somebody that doesn't go to regular meetings and all, they may not realize that.
Yeah, so I think we need a much more kind of bipartisan, nonpartisan viewpoint on our county. And so, I tell folks all the time, party doesn't matter at the local level, it's about the person. And it's about what my plans are for the future, what my goals are for the future of the office. And in my mind, it's not a Republican or a Democrat platform. It's my goal is to give you more accessible, more transparent, and a much more focus on customer service mentality in the office to serve our taxpayers. So that's not a Democrat, Republican platform. That's just a serving you platform.
All right, excellent. Dave Thomas is our guest. He is running for county auditor. He's a Republican, but that part doesn't matter.
And remember, I'm not the Dave Thomas of Wendy's.
No,
just
no.
the Dave Thomas of Austinburg. Yep.
So don't ask him for a cheeseburger.
No, I could make you one though, but not a Frosty. Never made a Frosty before.
All right.